o'clock. I'll call the regularly monthly commission meeting to order. There's a slight tweak to our agenda here. As you guys can see, there's 2 opportunities for public comment, specific to the budget hearing, which the details are provided in our packet. There'll be an opportunity to change agendas and then another opportunity for public comment if anybody want to make that statement. So, first order of business would be the budget hearing public comment section. Anybody would like to make a comment about the budget that was included in our packet? Not seeing any hands. I will move on. Has the commission had a chance to look at the 2 resolutions that are in our packet?
Yes.
So I need to formally open the budget hearing session, and I shall do so. The budget hearing is now open. Pursuant to ORS 294.471. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Now, again, does the commission have any comments or clarifications on the 2 resolutions that are included in this budget hearing?
Can I make a comment, Stuart?
Please.
There is a correction. It's just it doesn't change the material values on the supplemental budget resolution, but on the first page under the general operating fund, down in the expenses or requirements section.
Which page?
So this is page 7. You're going to see personnel services, material services, capital outlay, and then a few lines down, total appropriations. The supplemental budget or updated budget amount of $4,545,000. That's actually an incorrect number. It doesn't include the $25,001 change that's up under materials and services. But I know the resolution that is in the packet to sign does have the corrected number. It's $4,570,706 in total appropriations for the supplemental budget. Does that make sense?
Is that the materials and services 25?
That's correct.
Is that for the difference between the costs associated with our strategic business plan?
That's correct. Right.
Just so everybody is clear on that I think the initial amount that we put in, or rather we got proposals back that all came in about the right amount, or higher than what we'd initially budgeted. So the thought was that we could add this money in now as an opportune time in order to keep things cleaner, since regardless of which one we select, it's pretty darn close. Both of them are close, so we might as well update those. Anything else, Mark?
That was all I had.
Okay, and then a general characterization of both these. The first one is really just a correction.
That's correct.
And the second one reflects the reprioritizations.
Right.
The 2 resolutions. So, are there any other thoughts or questions on part of the commission?
Just redoing this, I appreciate all the time, Mark, did redoing this, and Jeff, you were sitting on those meetings. It was a correction that we needed to do. I think it's a good learning lesson for the commission and hopefully for the budget committee that we need to do a little bit better historical perspective about what funds we actually have available to spend on projects. I think that we just need to keep a better eye on it. With a few more years of experience, everybody will spell it, get better. But it's a good learning lesson for everyone, and I think that it's a good discussion to have, especially with the budget committee next year. So, I'd like to thank the department and Beck also.
Anything else? At this point, I will need a Motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve supplemental budget for fiscal year 2018-19, resolution 2018-14.
As corrected.
As corrected.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Any other discussions? Before I close the yes.
About the resolution for the, do we need to do that capital improvement project prioritization list?
Alderman, your motion, that cover both?
No.
So,
We will need another motion then.
for the corrected capital improvement project.
You just did 813.
Okay, so we need a motion now on the capital improvements. Thank you.
I move that we adopt resolution number 2018-13, resolution updating the quarterly reports capital improvement project prioritization list.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
And thanks for reprioritizing, getting that came out really well.
And I thought you were longer.
Who's left?
All right, now, any other discussions about any of the supplemental budget hearing? Anything related to supplemental budget hearing? Okay, at this point then I'm going to close the supplemental budget hearing at 6:07, and we will re-enter the regular monthly commission meeting at 6:07. So I'll ask for any changes to the agenda from the part of the commission. All right, there's another opportunity for public comment. If you're interested, take it in. Yes.
Hi, Barbara Dudley, Import. I'm here as Vice President of the Youth Demand Committee. We're coming up on October 13th. We just wanted to thank the port again. This is our 18th year in this tournament. I know, all right, Sarah? They have been invaluable. Karen, Bill, here, Chris, just is amazing. And, you know, Aaron, everybody, always support us, and we really, really appreciate it. It talks about it and what we do. We have 2 scholarships we give every year. We help it to enhance the salmon habitat on the clinic as our mission statement. So anyway, we couldn't do it without the port's support. We just wanted to thank you again. And if you want to come, we've got our drift boat raffle. We'll be drawing the ticket for that day, the Willie boats that we have. So at weigh-in is at, I think, like 3 o'clock after 3. It's always a lot of fun. We have a lot of prizes and stuff. So I'd like to see everybody come out. So thank you very, very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Nothing else, no one else interested in making a comment. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Has everybody had a chance to review the consent calendar? And anyone interested in moving anything from the consent calendar at this time? Good? All right. Great. Then at this point, I will need a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. We will continue to move on. Old business, items removed from consent calendar 1. We have accounts paid. Is that you'll be chatting with us about?
So the accounts paid report is in the packets. We're all caught up, so we're back to our 1-month time frame for these reports. So I guess if there's any questions on any of the disbursements that are there.
Does anyone have any questions?
On page 1, or 69, Mark, can you tell us what the remedial number was supposed to, where the remedial
Page 1, Paul?
Yeah, page 1, page 69, it's 40357.
Yeah.
It's the stuff they use to get all the spray paint stuff off the walls. So it's a consumable item that we buy.
Oh, was there any, so it wasn't, there was, we had this remedial.
No, it's a product. I believe is what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
I was also curious on the office rental, is that a monthly or quarterly?
Is that for the design space? That's monthly for 2 modular offices. One, the port admin office, and then also the customs, U.S. Customs trailer, which is recouped. That cost is recouped in our lease when they make their monthly lease payment. But it is a monthly payment.
All right. Anybody have any questions about accounts payable at this point?
I have a question on page, last page. Was the eelgrass monitoring at 1345, $5,055.26? Is that just comes up once a year, or, and does it have any reflection of the fact that they moved our
Well,
eelgrass patch?
we have. Yeah, it does. We're required to report annually what the status of our eelgrass mitigation area is. So you know what the density is, how many stalks we have per square feet, things like that. Because there's a performance requirement on the permit that we're supposed to meet. So the report was filed a little bit early this year because we're trying to get that settled with them, and that's what it costs. So it's a one-time-a-year report that comes out. We use Civic Habitat to help us put together the report and also do the count itself too. So
That wasn't affected by what had happened.
we'd have to do the report either way, but it does reflect what happened in the report. So
Okay. So you have to count how many per square foot
yeah.
unit? Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone, anything else? Jim, anything on your side? All right, then, with no other questions there, I think we could move to the next order of business, the commission liaison assignments. People have had a chance to speak to that. If you have any questions, any comments, I think it's appreciate your efforts, Karen, turning that down and putting us in touch with everybody. I'll have an update during the commissioner's reports. Anyone have any questions on the liaison? Great. Moving on to new business. We have a discussion about the strategic business plan consulting proposals. Terry?
Thank you. So Aaron and I have been tag teaming this project. It was obviously started before I came on board, and Aaron sent out a request for proposals, and we had received only one proposal, and so we extended that date through the 19th of September, and did some outreach, both Aaron and I, to try to attract additional proposers so that we had something to compare. And we were successful in getting a second proposer. And those proposals have been reviewed by Mark and Aaron and myself, and I was hoping to be prepared tonight to present to you the winning proposer that we were going to do final negotiations with. I'm not quite there because one of the proposers is out of the country, and I was having a hard time tracking her down to get some questions answered. So they're both strong proposals. They both understand the weight of having this project completed as quickly as possible, but also following the state template and making sure that this is a document that will really work for us for the next 5 years. And they understand that it is a high priority for us in terms of moving forward with the state and other agencies in terms of project funding and just relationships.
And so what I'm proposing is that I send you a packet the first, probably the Tuesday of next week, that has the two proposers with a side-by-side analysis and a decision about the winning proposal, and seek to have a phone vote to approve a contract within the first couple weeks of October, so that we can all meet on the phone. We don't have to gather here. It still has to, we have to make the telephone meeting available to the public, which Karen and I will figure out how to do that appropriately. But we will just have that telephone meeting, and we can talk about the proposals themselves and the final negotiation in terms of just some details that I'm working out that we need to make sure that the winning proposer, just some work we need them to perform, and make sure that all those details are finalized. And so we'll just, once we get all that done, I'll send that to you, and we will just ask for approval of that contract, and then we will launch immediately. Both proposers are ready to roll as soon as we get a contract signed. So we will start, the first part of that is gathering, the first part of the process is to gather stakeholder names and start the public involvement process and interviewing key stakeholders and inviting individuals from the community and our customers and stakeholders at large, basically, to either come to public meetings or have an opportunity to have their voice heard through a survey or some other meetings, because we recognize not everybody lives here and is available to come to a meeting or even has a schedule that allows them to come to a meeting. So we're trying to branch out and have some opportunities there. So that's the first big step. And we will ask commissioners to be involved in, I'm not exactly sure what that plan will look like, but to be involved in some of those discussions so that you can hear firsthand what people are saying and what their thoughts and desires are for the port in the future. And we'll have drafts of reports that come before you, and you can ask questions about clarifying points before those become final and become part of that two-piece report, really, with the strategic business plan and the capital facilities plan update. So there'll be lots of check-ins with you along the way, and we'll have a calendar eventually of what those are, and you'll have opportunities to say, we'd like to find out more about this or that, or we'd like more explanation about certain parts of this, so that both of those plans also reflect the Commission's desires, and so you have your input is represented there as well. So on top of involving community members, we're also involving you. And so I apologize that we weren't able to bring that today, because this is a very important piece of next steps for us, but we will, I'll have that to you early next week, and we'll move forward in a couple weeks with that contract.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions at this stage? I think the key thing that you hit on as well as the timing on this, we need to keep things to get this thing moving as quickly as we can. So appreciate your efforts on
We will rock it.
that. Excellent. Okay. I'd like to move into the next item, Ron's proposed lease amendment. I think we've all received a copy of this here at the meeting. Aaron, would you like to take this or chat a little bit about this?
Sure, thank you.
Please.
So you'll see the staff report here that kind of leads into the overall lease amendment itself. A couple of points that should probably be, as you read through this, that should be highlighted. One of them being that Ron's has expressed their intent to dissolve the lease. So that was, we were notified of that under the terms of the current lease. That's something that they can do, and they have done. So we need to move forward with how best to do that. That's why we're doing this. So I was asked to, over the last couple months, work out several challenges that we've got in the process of turning that property back over to Rhonda's. One of them being the distribution of the dredge spoils that we have on the property there. So I did my best to represent what the port needs and try to collaborate and come up with an acceptable lease termination amendment. So you have here the main points of it are that we would, effective June 25th, 2019, the 2-acre gear storage site that you see out there where we store commercial fishing gear would, that lease is right now slated to be that portion will be turned back to Ronnis June 25th, 2019. A very quick caveat to that is that they've expressed that they're interested in renegotiating or negotiating continued use of that property in the current way with the port that we do, so long as we can find a mutually beneficial arrangement to be able to do that. The termination of the industrial zone portion of the property, effective September 30th, is otherwise known as tax lot 100, if I'm not mistaken on that.
The entire property.
Okay. So you'll see it here depicted on the last page there, but just the industrial zone portion of it there. Ronnis will move and utilize the dredge spoils currently stored on the leased property, and they would pay all royalties due to the state for use of that dredge material that I previously mentioned before in port meetings. The port would, in the next 5 years, undertake some sort of project that benefits both the port and Ronnis. My overall idea with this would be that it should be a project that we need to undertake anyway. So basically, it's work that we are going to need to do in either fashion that would also benefit Ronnis, and it would be in the amount that's equal to whatever their royalty payment comes out to be. I estimate it's probably going to be around the $45,000 mark. So that's what we would seek to identify a mutually beneficial project in that realm. The port agrees to indemnify and hold Ronnis harmless from claims, demands, or liability up to $1 million. We worked this. This was something that went back and forth a couple of times. I believe the state tort law has the cap for public entities at around $600,000. Originally, this was what we worked out. So, I did receive an email from the Midwater Trawlers, or Heather Mann, on behalf of the Midwater Trawlers, asking to me to specify a couple of the particular benefits that come to the Port of Newport and also to Newport in general by getting this going. Basically, you'll see there's an email from them in your material, and then my reply to that. Basically, Ronnis is and I can't speak on behalf of Ronnis, but they are seeking to develop a heart of the maritime industry in Newport, and it would be located adjacent to the Newport International Terminal. So they would be able to provide a home for support industries across the spectrum of maritime industries in Newport that would include, anything that's water related is within the realm of possibility. So I get a lot more specific in the email. I won't carry on unless you'd like me to answer any more questions on that. But I think it is something that's going to benefit us in the long run. It's going to make our international terminal more marketable, and it's going to add jobs to Newport. So I recommend this is the best deal that I could come up with, and I recommend approval of this lease amendment.
And Pete's taking a look at this?
Yes. Yeah, he reviewed it. As a matter of fact, the details on the indemnity clause were something that we worked pretty hard to try and work out. So,
thank you. Any of the commissioners have questions?
No, I would just like to comment that I greatly appreciate you guys working with us on that royalties. We won't be stopped from moving forward, and we'll be able to kick in something here in the near future to make it right, and to just show some good faith right from the beginning. It's good.
I guess I was just going to ask about, I guess Pete took a look at it. Is there anything from Pete's standpoint that you know of that for the lease long term that we should be aware of, or anything from Pete's standpoint other than the indemnity clause that he was concerned about or worked on, or?
His main concern was on that indemnity clause. He did a fair amount of work on that and focused a lot of attention on that. And, worked with the Ronda's lawyer as well to come up with those details. But everything else seemed to be that was his main concern.
He didn't have any other major concerns?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, there was part of this, I don't know if it was part of this that we talked about the 9 acres, our 9 acres, about not being able to do some work out there. Is this going to be in conjunction with this? Or is that separate?
Yeah, no, I believe you're probably talking about what's in my report. I put an RFP out for some, to get some property maintenance done out there. It is not, well, part of it is, Ronis may need additional material.
Right.
So the question came up, if they need additional material, we've got, a fairly sizable amount of material on our 9 acres, which is right next to where they're going to need it. So the next question is, okay, how is it going to be sorted out? Because the difference between the material is that our material is a lot more convoluted. There's a mixture of, there's some concrete in it, there's some asphalt in it, and a few other things that needs to get sifted out. It's been, GRI's come out and done some testing on it, but it wasn't comprehensive in terms of deciding what the content of the material is. They did some testing to figure out if it was contaminated or not, and if so, with what. We believe we have a pretty good handle on that, but the material that's on our property, in order to be accessed and then be usable for Rondas in some fashion or other, has to be sorted. So I put out RFP to try and see what it would take to get that done, so that we at least have an idea of what that would look like. But that's probably what I would imagine you're asking about.
And we did core sample that already. Are they looking to do more core samples, or?
It's probably not going to be needed right now.
Okay. Would that be part of our continuing development on that? Be able to use that, keeping the permit aligned for the construction permit, would that count towards that work?
I think it probably will. I haven't talked to the city about it yet, but either way, it's what we've done up to this point is move some dirt every several months,
right,
to keep performing toward that permit, as I was directed by the Port Commission to do. Okay. So if that's the intent of the Port Commission, to continue working on that. I mean, the other aspect of it, though, too, is that it could very easily be considered property maintenance, like I said, because it's what created wetlands out there to begin with was lack of property maintenance. So all of this is really just a matter of trying to get that property arranged the way that it should be, so that it's no longer devalued by a hodgepodge placement of material. So it doesn't necessarily, it could be considered property maintenance also.
And then the project we would be working with Ronda's, that could include working with the mitigation site for our property, on their property, or is that still?
Right now, that's not part of, that's nothing I've talked with Ronda's about. It wouldn't be, and like I mentioned before, the problem with being able to do that is we got to have we have to mitigate for something. We can't mitigate for a thing that we haven't decided that we're going to do. So if we decide that we're going to do something on the 9 acres, whatever the decision is that's going to be, then that would be the time to go and approach Ronda's to see if we could possibly work something out. I don't know. I haven't talked to them about that. But for right now, talking about my intent for if we do get that material sorted out there, it would be to leave the wetlands as they are, because we aren't permitted currently to fill them. So we would leave them as they are and just get the property cleaned up around it. That's my idea with it.
Isn't there an opportunity for some revenue actually from the property maintenance you're talking about? If we were taking this around, the aggregate that would be sifted out of some of this is actually sellable?
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. There's a lot of people that say there's nothing in it that's really usable. I don't really know that because there's other people that believe that there is usable. It depends on what you're going to use it for, really. What's not usable to one person for one purpose is obviously to somebody else, But we can't really approach any of that until we get it separated, categorized, and stockpiled properly. And then we can go about figuring out, okay, how much do we have that Rhonda's might be able to benefit from, and for what? And then, you know, if we have other, it's one of the things I've been working on here lately is trying to find potential customers for not just that material, but the material that we have out here at NOAA. Because one of the things that we're losing here is an upland dredge disposal site. So in the long run, we really need to figure out a solution for where we're going to put our future, the proceeds from our future dredging projects. And if we can't pay to get them offshore, then we need to find adequate upland space to put them. And you know, one of the ways of doing that is clearing out our sites as we have them, so that we can put more material there.
That was my question about the running out of places to dredge from. So we can't just add on to Mount Noah?
Well, we can add on to it, but at a certain point, it's going to reach.
Then it'll be Mount Noah again?
Yeah, it'll start spilling over the sides, and then we're going to get in trouble for that. So, you know, ideally.
Is the 9 acres a site that's approved?
Yeah, I'm not sure about.
The wetland and such.
Yeah, it's and it. So one way or the other, what we want to do is I should hope move some sand someplace, and part of getting what's that on our 9 acres to be sellable is getting it sorted. I don't know what it would cost. Don't have any idea. That's what the RFP is for, is to try and find that out, and then and make it easier for Rhonda's to possibly benefit from that material if we identify something that they can use in there.
And so you're saying instead of this hodgepodge of, I don't even want to know what's out there, it would be kind of level almost, kind of looking all right.
That's the way I've explained it in the RFP, is that the end state would be stockpiles of usable material on one corner of the property. The rest of it would be fairly level with the wetlands still protected, and then we go from there. And figure, you know, at least the land is then a bit more valuable than what it is in its current state. So.
Anybody?
I just think this is a great opportunity. I know that it's a need for the fishing community, and also bringing in some independent buyers and another option for the fishermen. I think this is a great opportunity, and I think we should take effort from forward taking on this and bringing in partners and get do something. Because I know, speaking with some of the smaller boat owners, that having an independent buyer, another option to sell their product is a big benefit to everybody. So, thank you. Very forward thinking.
Right. Jim, anything from your side?
No, great job, and I appreciate the hard work.
Great.
I may be asking obvious, so I want to make sure. So the lease will cease to exist June 25th of next year.
It'll be amended, and we haven't touched.
No? Okay.
That's in the lease agreement. The notice was specific to the 2-acre gear storage area.
Okay.
So that notice was just for that site. Otherwise, the lease is, I don't know the exact date, but 2022.
Okay.
I think it's June 2022, somewhere. And an important point to mention on that too, on the gear storage area, because I imagine, and it's something I caught after the fact, after I got this email especially, there a number of people are probably concerned about what's going to happen with their gear storage. And that's what as I understand, we have some time to try and work through us being able to continue to possibly operate that space in a similar fashion to what we have. That's what I would prefer to be able to do. Worst case scenario, though, we've got space on port property to be able to store that gear. We don't want to. Gear storage is currently the biggest revenue earner at the terminal, so we don't want to lose money on it. So we're going to try our best to try and maintain that. Plus, we're about the biggest source of commercial fishing gear in the estuary, so we want to keep that service open for the fishermen.
And I'll just follow up on that too, that I think Rhonda's has been really good about being open-minded about what our next plan is for that site. Yeah. So to echo your comments again, it's not like we're going to be out in the cold here. I think we will be working on a collaborative solution to the gear storage. And Ron has been very forthcoming and very encouraging about finding a solution there. So I think that's also a good thing. All right, anybody have anything else? I will need a motion then to approve and execute the addendum to the lease with Ron Singh.
I move that we approve and execute the addendum to the lease with Lawrence Incorporated.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Okay. The motion passes. Thank you. Next up on our agenda are the staff reports. Accounting supervisor. Mark.
So in the packet are 2 months worth of financial reports. The first set as of July 31st, the second as of August 31st, 2018. This gets the finance department completely up to date on month-end closing and reporting tasks. So we are happy about that. I want to thank Becca Bishop, Deanna Davis, and Annie Tarr for a lot of hard work in the last few months getting everything caught up. It's been great. We've also been able to move on to a few tasks that we have been on kind of a wish list for a year. So we're starting in on those, and that's exciting. Last commission meeting, the commission requested a financial analysis of the June 2018 fiscal year-end balances, and finance should have those completed mid-October, which will correspond with finishing up our audit preparation work. So we should really have some good final balances at that point. It was our idea to email the analysis to the commissioners for review, and then questions could be answered at the October commission meeting. The port also received our engagement fiscal year 2017-18 audit engagement letter from Grimstad and Associates. And I believe this is the 5th and final year of the contract that we have with Grimstad and Associates. We continue to work with Todd Kimball to complete the audit preparation. I think we're 75 to 80% complete, and we expect to turn in our audit work within the next 2 weeks. Todd Kimball was in 2 weeks ago, and part of his work was reviewing the port's cash balances, all of our bank accounts, investments, particularly looking again at what we're classifying as restricted and unrestricted. And we've made a few changes based on findings by reading through the either bond issue agreements or loan documents. Some of these classifications, I think, go back to 2012, 13, or even before, and it's sometimes hard to find a trail, so we just went right back to the original documentation. Again, just 1 or 2 minor adjustments. But in doing that, he also looked at the interest rates that the port is earning on our deposits at the 3 banks where we have deposited funds. Interest rates are climbing right now, and many local governments in Oregon invest money in the Oregon Local Government Investment Pool. The state allows a pooling of funds, and thus a higher interest rate is offered. Right now, that pool is offering a 2.25% interest rate. I think ours at Oregon Coast Bank, where the bulk of our funds are deposited, our average rate there is 0.40%, so quite a big difference. Todd and I met with Fred Postlethwaite, CEO of Oregon Coast Bank, and discussed the current interest rates. Mr. Postlethwaite agreed to match the 2.25% local government investment pool rate in a liquid, highly liquid money market account, so the funds won't be tied up. In calculating what that means to the port, our interest revenue will grow from maybe $27,000 a year to $140,000 a year. So that's a significant adjustment to our earnings.
Can we make it retroactive?
Yeah, Exactly. We plan to have the same meeting in discussion with Umpqua Bank and Columbia Bank as well. That's all that I have.
Well, Mark, that's one heck of a report, I'll give you that.
Perfect.
Anybody else would like to comment?
I just say that we should keep track of what the Oregon local government investment pool is. You know, whenever it goes up, we can contact our banks. And
Exactly.
Be competitive. If not, we should go with the higher interest rate.
Right.
Money.
Yeah. And yeah, that was our discussion. So.
Great. Anyone have anything else? Right. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
All right. Next on the schedule here, Director of Operations report.
I don't have any increases of 140,000.
Doesn't happen very often.
But hoist dock revenue, forklift usage was up by 91% at the hoist dock. We're having this tuna year is better than last year by a significant amount, so that's what explains that. South Beach has been really busy. RV park is above capacity. We're still working on installation of the fire burglary system at the NIT building and also at the net shop next door. It appears that we're going to have more contractors bidding on that the NOAA work this year than in years past. We use ORPN. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's the Oregon. That's the state database for bidding jobs. It's a state procurement site. And so it got a little bit wider distribution, and we'll probably be doing a lot more of that in the future. There's a lot of companies that have you pay them to distribute your bids widely, and we don't need to do that. If we use the Orphan site, we're going to get folks from California and even up in Washington coming in to compete for work. We already talked about the Ronda's lease amendment, and on down to the Port Dock 5 update. The timeline still remains the same. Of course, we're still meeting the benchmarks on that. I gave some electrical load data to OBEC that I acquired from PUD. The question is in the future whether or not we're going to want to go to 50 amps to offer 50 amp service at Port Dock 5. I think we should definitely do that in the future. The question is when. So right now it looks like we could probably add the conduit to the new pier so that later on those conductors can be pulled, and it's not going to affect the cost significantly on the overall budget. So that's probably going to be a wise decision to make, I think. The reason we sometimes trip breakers in the wintertime, especially on 5B and 5C when they're pumping on crab, if they're not running it off of boat generated power. If they're using our power, sometimes it trips breakers. So aside from that, we get a lot of requests to go to 50 amp service. We conducted a preliminary evaluation of the boardwalk structure to see if we could save some money by loading materials across from the street, and it's probably not going to work. Like I said, that's about where we're at right now on Port Dock 5. We basically just got started on the electrical design for it. We should still be on track to finish up prior to the end of the calendar year. The rogue seawall evaluation, we've got a visit from Berger ABAM and GRI coming out to go through the inside of the building on October 8th, and also to once again look at the wall itself. They're probably going to do it in the afternoon because I'd like to get them out here at low tide. Maintenance dredging bidding process is still ongoing. We talked about the Ronda's lease amendment. I think I've basically filled you in on all the details of my ideas for the sorting at McLean Point. The main point with this is that it's an RFP right now, so we would need to make a decision with how to budget for that if at some point we decided it was a good idea. One of the main points that you're going to see that goes back and forth between the different potential proposers is a disagreement on when the best time of year is to do that work, because if you're going to disturb, right now it's covered in vegetation, so erosion is not a big problem. My idea with doing this in this fashion by getting the proposals out first is that we can choose which proposal we think is best and then go back and update our erosion and sediment control plan in accordance with what plan they have, and so that it kind of moves it forward together so that we're not dictating to them how they have to do it. We can use their expertise and knowledge to determine the overall best plan. So that's the method I'm using right now. We'd be doing this under the 1200 CA permit that the port has maintained for about the last 15 years. So that's the permit that we'd be looking to use. South Beach Boat Ramp is a new development that we just became aware of. The Oregon State Marine Board contacted us because they said they had gotten some complaints, and I still don't know why. Most of the issues about the boat ramp and the landing floats around the boat ramp go to the Marine Board for some reason. The people call the Marine Board direct. But we found out that the toe or the bottom of the boat ramp has got a heck of a drop off down there. So at low tide, some folks have possibly come close to getting their trailers stuck as they were, offload or putting on. So at first we thought sometimes what causes that is boats that on lower tide, especially the bigger boats, they try to power up onto the trailer and it wallows out a hole at the bottom where the dirt starts, underneath the boat ramp. So we had a diver take a look at it, and the pictures are in your meeting packet. They're not as good in black and white. I should probably email these out too. But it appears to me that there wasn't riprap placed there when the project was done. And it calls for Class 700 riprap, which means that the largest stone in Class 700 riprap is 700 pounds, so it's pretty sizable stuff. There definitely wasn't that stuff put in down there. At least that's my opinion. So the diver who took those pictures for us, he actually dove on that boat ramp when it was brand new, and he said, in his opinion, it looks about the same as it did when it was first made. So it's probably a problem that's been there for a long time. We are going to need to fix it. The solutions I don't have yet. I don't believe that Class 700 riprap would be a good idea to put in there, because what's going to wind up happening is you'll dump that stuff in there, and then there's going to be sizable rocks that are going to stick up far enough that on low tides people are going to ding their props when they're trying to get off or on the trailer, and then they're going to complain about that, and it's going to be an issue. So we'll commit some work to figuring out what the best solution is for that. We're going to have to go out for permits for it because it's going to be in water work. So it's going to be costly. We're going to have to get the permits in place, and we're going to have to figure out, what the best solution to it is. We would be able to compete for grant money in the coming fiscal year for it. From Oregon State Marine Board, we probably do pretty well with that. But that's going to be another project we're probably going to need to do. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get it done this in water work period, because it's going to have to go through all the permitting process.
Do we have any liability there, Aaron? Like, if people do get their boats or the trailers down there and they just start cranking on and start ripping their tires off or whatever, or does the Marine Board, do they issue fines or any kind of penalties to municipalities?
To what's that?
To us.
So usually the way it works is that they notify us if they believe there's a problem. We use their grant money to build the dock. As I've learned, it appears to me that they did the acceptance on the project. So they had sent out their own representative who evaluated whether or not the job was complete, and he determined that it was complete. I think that if there was some sort of question there, I believe that I would. It's my stance that I don't think the job was complete, because if there was that large of riprap put in around the toe of the boat ramp, it'd still be there. But as far as liability goes, we could probably put some some signs out that would lessen that potential. But as Pete has said before, you always have the nuisance. Somebody could always choose to sue you, and then you're going to have to defend it. So that's what I know about it right now.
Yeah, I just wonder if maybe an advisory wouldn't be a bad idea. A little sign or something that says something that would be appropriate.
Something that, yeah.
Like the Fisher Buddy and say,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Does the parking permit alleviate some of that risk? So they assume risk when they use the lot?
It's a good question. The liability question and how far it goes and was not one that I was prepared to answer this evening, so I have to do some looking into it.
You did pass last month a change to the the facilities code that says that we aren't liable for your personal property, which is, I think, goes beyond the parking permit.
But I don't think of it is I don't know how that applies to a parking day pass over to South Beach.
But it's not a parking pass, it's just personal property.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
There's no little Band-Aid fix it to get it better for a little while while we figure things out, or?
All that's well, I was hoping that there would be, but it's all considered in-water work. So anything that we do, even if it was a matter of, if it was an issue of boats powering on their trailers, they would have created a hump just behind where the hole would have got dug at, and we could have drug that back in. But even that was enough disturbing of the bottom that the Army Corps said, no, that's in-water work. So
Maybe when they dredge the marina, they do that.
could be, could be.
Throwing a bunch of cement bags in there or something.
Now the problem is the material. Like it's nothing that we can do until we get the permits, and then we're going to have to do it the right way.
I just want to make sure that people are damaging their stuff, whether we're liable for it or not. If it is appropriate for us to have some signage or advisory probably would be a bad idea.
Right.
So look into it, please.
Oh yeah, I'll take care of that.
Do you want me to email these pictures to you in color, or they're in the meeting packet online?
They're on the link.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do or don't?
Okay, did you want to...
Maintenance crew, I'll have more pictures next month, but they are doing excellent work. The fabrication that they've done on a number of projects is really paid off. We have a fleet of, between South Beach and the north side, 24 dumpsters that all basically need the undercarriage rebuilt on them, and they've done all that. Or they're in the process of doing it, and they built all their own parts basically, with a few exceptions, but it's going very well. We still need to get to the dock rods over on the that we purchased for the commercial marina this year, but we're getting around to that. So you'll see that we had to do some repairs to our dump truck this month, put a new transmission in it, and that's about all I've got this month.
I also say that I think the maintenance crew is doing really good work. They're building some mono good things out of the terminals. Public gear storage, stacking ungodly, awkward outliers. And they're busy at it. And I see there's a really good attitude for them.
Anybody have anything else for him? All right. I think we can keep going here. General Manager report.
Thank you. So this is my 5th week. So reflecting on the past month, there's just so many great things, including what you just heard from Aaron and what you heard from Mark. Just amazing work going on with this team. It's just great. And I've had the opportunity to walk with a variety of staff who don't work in our administrative building and sort of see things through their eyes and listen to them talk about the work they're doing and their sort of dreams and vision, which will be really fun to tap into as we go through the strategic planning process too, I think, because oftentimes we don't have the opportunity to tap into what they're thinking about for the future, and that will be a neat aspect of that. But so that's been really great, and this team from head to toe is just dedicated, passionate, and super smart and ambitious, and I'm just amazed at the production and level of work that's going on. So you don't have to worry that anybody is, sort of kicking back and relaxing. Everybody is working full steam ahead, and it's just really, it makes it fun to come to work when there's people like that you're working with. So really I'm just kind of getting to know the port business and how we do things, and as I'm learning that from staff, I'm finding places where I feel we need to tighten up procedures and policies, and some of the places where we have some gaps are pretty, I would say, pretty concerning to me around some of our personnel policies and procedures, and or lack thereof, and some of our procurement policies and things. We just haven't evolved and developed those policies, and so that just happens to be some of the work that I was doing 4 years at Metro, and so I have a lot of examples that I've tapped some of my former peers to sort of glean good examples that we can steal good ideas from. And I'm working with the special districts on the sort of HR personnel side of things, where we're getting the personnel manual reviewed as part of our membership benefit, and so no cost. And they have just hired, so that they have a contract with an HR consulting firm that has reviewed that, and then they just hired a full-time HR person to work for special districts, and she's going to review that as well. So we'll have a thorough sort of double look at that, and that's just puts us way ahead of the game in terms of really just putting together a great manual. And the staff look to that manual when they have questions about, what do I do if I have a sick family member, or what do I, what's my vacation benefit, and so it will be nice to have a up-to-date and complete as we can build that document. So that work is moving forward, and another big project that Becca is helping me with, and Annie Tarr from the office is also helping me with, and we're just starting this process with HR Answers as a consultant, is implementing the Oregon Equity Pay Law. And every employer in Oregon, public and private, has to comply with equity in their pay through classifications, and you have to go through an evaluation process to determine if similar positions, if you look across the band of similar positions, if folks are being paid equitably. I mean, there's a few pieces that, if somebody's been here 30 years versus 3 months, there's obviously differences, or if there have been merit increases, that have bumped someone up the scale. There are obviously, you can recognize that, and you don't have to bring everybody up to equity with that. But as a basic pay scale and how people are compensated, this will really, you have to look at working conditions and knowledge and the kind of work they're doing, and it's a pretty in-depth analysis, and we have until the end of this calendar year to do all this work, and then we have 3 years to take the corrective action in terms of the pay with anyone who's negatively impacted, and bring the equity up to a point where it is in an acceptable zone. So lots of work to do on that. One of the complicating factors is that we have a pretty helter-skelter classification system and not a lot of job descriptions that are up to date. And so this will give us a great opportunity to bring all of those up to date and write the descriptions that aren't there. And I think actually that will be an exciting thing for staff to participate in, because I think it helps the employee and their supervisor better understand expectations. And in the middle of all this, November, we have our annual evaluation period, so it just sort of fits together. It's a whole bundle of work, but we're just going to march through it day by day and provide support for staff that don't have a desk where they sit in front of a computer and try to take some of the pressure off of folks to get this done. So that's a big piece of work. It feels really good to start moving forward. I'm not sure. Okay. What is that? And so that's taking a lot of focus. Obviously, the strategic business plan is like number one on the list, and you will hear more about that as I described earlier. I've spent a lot of time, and I will continue to spend a lot of time getting involved in community activities and organizations, and trying to get out and meet with people. And I'm working to meet with all of our local, state, and federal elected officials or their staff, and just trying to emphasize that this really important document, the strategic business plan, is coming along, and we want to talk to them about funding opportunities and business opportunities, and people are extremely receptive and open and very positive. I'm pleasantly surprised, and that's an exciting piece of work for me as well. And I met with Spencer Neville, the city manager, Newport city manager, last week, and he said it's time for a joint work session with city council and the commission. And so we're hoping to schedule that in November after the election and before the holidays hit. So we will work to do that. That would be a session where we would have sort of 2 or 3 agenda items of mutual interest that we would discuss, and sort of each board would update each other on big projects and mutual impact kinds of things going on. So we'll be surveying you for dates and availability. We'll probably do that over lunch or something. So it provides some networking and social opportunity as well as some business. And apparently that occurs about once a year between the 2 groups. So we'll work on that. And Aaron and I are attending the Oregon Public Ports Association meeting down in Coos Bay the 4th and 5th of October. That's a great opportunity for us to network with other port management, and also get in contact with the Coastal Caucus members that are going to be in attendance, which isn't the entire Coastal Caucus, but there'll be a number of elected officials there. So we will be talking to people, networking, and we did submit some Port Dock 5 work as a capital project request for funding through the Port Association just 2 weeks ago, I think.
Right.
So it's a good reason for us to be there and reinforce that, we're here and we want to get these projects done, and we need those funds. So what are these things? A couple of things that I wrote on the, before the October meeting, I will send out the current general manager position description as a sort of start the conversation about what knowledge, skills, and abilities we're looking for in a new general manager. So I will take sort of first run at that and do some red lines and edits based on sort of my impressions and my thoughts about what kind of person I think would be a good fit for a long-term general manager here. And I'll send that out to you in advance so you can do some thinking about that, and we can discuss that in October at our meeting. And the other thing, I wanted to give you a couple of calendar reminders. So Thursday here, 3 to 5, we have our little end of the busy season barbecue celebration. If you haven't RSVP'd, it's not too late. And we're going to have all kinds of good food, and I think 30 or so people have already
Approximately,
RSVP'd.
29 and 30, 31.
Yeah, we invited the commission and all port staff. I think sometimes this has been just a South Beach sort of event, but we invited folks from the north side, and we invited our mates to come, and we invited everybody to bring their spouses or significant other, and so please do come 3 to 5 right here. And then the other thing, you'll notice on the calendar section, we have links to some of these conferences. We've been talking about the importance of commissioners being notified in advance to get things on your calendars if you're interested in attending, and some of these conferences are very appropriate for commissioners to attend because lots of elected officials attend those conferences, and they're making decisions about supporting funding or not for ports, and so those are good opportunities for us to be present. the ones we have listed, yes, we did put links, and you have information at your places that we printed off of those websites. I have one that I just found today about the Pacific Northwest Waterways Association. They're having a conference up in Vancouver, Washington, the 10th and 12th, 10th through the 12th of October. But this is their mission to Washington, D.C., where they set up meetings with Congress and the Senate, and that's in March. And so we also put this at your place because that's a longer trip. This is a draft agenda. I think it's last year's agenda, but roughly it's a Sunday through Wednesday or Thursday, I guess, kind of endeavor. And I would think that this is a very important place if any of you are able to go for part of that or all of that. So we will continue to try to get you this information ahead of time so that you have time to look at your calendars. I realize that it's a 2-week time window. That's a little difficult, but we will endeavor to get those in front of you. And I believe that is all I'm going to say.
Anybody have any questions for Terry?
Yeah, just one thing as I was looking through the reports, and particularly Aaron's a lot of things going on. I had a thought about something I'd seen somewhere else about a year at a glance. Calendar was just like a one-page big picture. So here's what's being worked on in the end, maybe some back burner items that are maybe not either on there or grayed out. Just something that gives a year at a glance, maybe a tool for the commission to be able to look at and kind of understand, well, can we work on this? No, we've got this and this. Just as a communication tool, maybe even a tool for staff to look at, and maybe the big items that are on, like the 3 major reports, staff reports we had today, would be just like a major publishing. Kind of see the timeline of where we're going, either the rest of the fiscal year or for a 12-month at a glance. Something that if it's too crowded for one piece of paper or goes in 2 pieces of paper, that's too much. Just the big picture. And so that's a thought I had, and I actually shared that thought with Terry today that I was going to, when to give her a heads up, I was going to bring it up tonight and just propose that, see what the commission thought and the staff thought about. Just something as a tool to look at where we're going, where the resources are. I'll throw that out there.
Organizing is good, and seeing, just a general idea where we're going at a glance. I'd love to have one in my notebook.
It's just a visual, right? It's like a Gantt chart, but yeah, and I think...
How is this in really nice colors?
I was thinking lots of color, yeah. So we'll take a stab at it and see what you think.
Kevin, you could put some basic milestones on some of these projects as well, so that, again, when you have a snapshot, you can roughly see where we're at. Is that what you're...
Yeah.
I think that would be kind of neat to see. Yeah.
So, you talk about CFO recruitment?
Yes. So when Todd Kimball was here a couple weeks ago, he and Mark and I talked about that, and I need to have additional conversations with him about that. He has some recommendations, and Mark is doing such a great job. I sort of thought, okay, we're fine now, but I realized we need to figure out how to assess the duties that Mark is doing and where, what are the gaps? Are there any gaps, and how do we fill that? So I need to. That is on my big whiteboard. It's on my list. I just didn't report on that. I apologize.
No, just when I was at the conference up in Lincoln City, I know Jackie Nicholas said maybe reach out to Council Board and Governors Cascade West. They might be able to help. And also, that's my
There was one thing I forgot to do, which is super important, and that is to acknowledge Mark, because Mark was acknowledged publicly at the Chamber of Commerce meeting this last Friday as the Employee of the Month for the whole city of Newport.
Let the record show everyone class.
And Aaron worked with Karen, and they submitted this incredible nomination form for Mark. And the Newport Chamber ambassador that reads these reports every month said, this is the most incredible nomination form she's ever read for anybody. And yeah, he had to get an award and stand up, and it was quite. I felt extremely proud being there. And I mean, Mark and I have only known each other for a month, and I'm like, oh, he's a rock star. This is so cool. And so I just bear with me. I just want to read a couple of things that that was submitted. Mark joined the staff in May of 2017 and quickly became an integral member of the team. His experience with auditing financials for special districts and municipalities was especially helpful in budget preparation for the 17-18 fiscal year. Since that time, his work ethic and expertise led to many positive changes in the accounting process at the port. In the course of 2017, Mark provided detailed financial information that was used to make critical business decisions. Because of his attention to detail, we were able to identify funding to award badly needed raises to over 68% of the port's workforce. This resulted in much needed stability in the organization at a time when the top management positions were in flux. He assisted in precise cost analysis that allowed us to add a second shift at our hoist dock. As a result, revenue into the port from independent buyers of seafood more than doubled, and the hoist dock increased revenue this year by 19% overall. Mark's work ensured an acceptable profit margin was maintained by the additional shift. There was no finance director pro tem appointed, so he served in that role to a great degree as well. He led the preparation of a successful audit that resulted in only 6 correcting entries compared to previous years in which more than 30 were required. In January 18, the port began to start preparing for budget meetings for the 18-19 year, and Mark was still in the lead in the finance department and has provided significant input in terms of information, documentation, and presentation. He has done all of this with a positive attitude, a spirit of team building, and a commitment to excellence. We look forward to working with him for many years to come. Go Mark!
That's right.
So that was pretty cool.
Great writers.
Okay, now I'm done.
All right. Do we have anything else for Terry? All right. Moving into commissioners' reports. Any commissioners have anything they'd like to update us on? Yes.
I talked to one thing I'd like to say is maybe we could have a joint meeting with the Port of Toledo.
Oh.
And in that, I ended up running into a commissioner at the Port of Toledo, and I didn't realize he had signed up for that meeting. And for some reason, we talked about this item, commissioner reports, and he said at the Port of Toledo, it's commissioner comments. And I think that would be maybe something better, because when I look at the commissioner report, I might not have something to report on, but I am talkative and I might have a comment. And so I kind of like to see that.
Karen's going to look at her little yellow book.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I'm just going to see if it's specified.
Right.
Does anybody have any thoughts on that? It's basically opening it up a little bit more for almost commissioners to comment on anything, but formalizing it on the budget. That's where the opportunity is. Any thoughts, concerns? Yeah. I mean, Karen, if it's something that you don't have...
Well, no, I'll read it to you. It says, the order of business may be modified from time to time at the discretion of the president as necessary. And so it has this, it generally has commissioner reports, but you certainly have the discretion to make a modification.
That'll be it.
Okay.
Okay. Modifying the commissioner's reports to include the words comments, issues on that section would be a good idea.
I was just we don't have a real formal way of talking to the commission yet and the management team about when, because the commercial fishermen user group is there for us to use, like, gosh, we really love them to weigh in on something. And so I, as liaison to the has kind of run into that more than you guys would. And so there are a couple things that have come up, that maybe would be worth calling another convening meeting and get them more back into the regular, get them deciding whether they want to do it bi-monthly like we had been and stuff like that, just so that we can shore up when they can expect us to call for their advice, or not an emergency basis all the time. And a couple things, I think that Tiger Fisherman talked about ongoing things with the docking things, that it's so willy-nilly and people get paid full mortgage, yearly mortgage, can't get to their spots, they don't really have a spot, and that's always something that we're discussing. And it might be good to try to see if we can shore up some of, I hear most of the complaints about, it's the only port that when you come in, other ports, someone's running down the dock and says, no, you can't dock here, did you read the sign, you're supposed to check in, blah, blah, blah. So trying to get a little more orderly something with, because we have so many transients and we don't have docks, and so there's an ongoing concern there. And also, there were there was a really beautiful big yacht that docked at the terminal, so I think they had some issues, mechanical issues. And then I saw kind of like a little ferry or something, some kind of passenger thing that was tied up at the Coast Guard, I think, or anchored out.
I think they were anchored out, is what I understand,
Anchored
yeah.
out. And Don had mentioned that those rates for those bigger boats are tied to the rates that we have already for shipping and stuff. When you pass a certain length of boat, it goes into the shipping dock fees, which are kind of high for passenger vessels like the big yachts and stuff. There seems to be interest in that in this slower time of year at the terminal. So I think those are a couple of things that would be good for the fishermen to weigh in on. And on the larger boats that might be more passenger vessels that come through, Newport is becoming more and more a destination, and maybe working on a third tier on dock fees. I don't know. It's just something that came up in my mind.
When are they scheduled for their next regular meeting?
I think they have.
Oh, okay.
So it is, I think that we're coming to ask for their help and then get them to shore up there. And I think they'll do bylaws. They have to work out there how they want their schedule. I mean, we didn't want to burn anyone out, that's why we did. But, and so I don't know if they still want to do something that they have a date, that they have a meeting, or if they just are kind of whatever we want them to have a meeting.
Please enter your password.
So they are going to us for advice, and I'd like to see that short up. There we go, so
Anybody have any other comments? A quick update. Go ahead.
I attended the OPAC meeting, and basically we talked about the territorial season amendments, part 5. We're probably going to get that come back to us. That's citing renewable energy. Some of the sites were taken off on Pacific City. Basically, the effect on Newport is just basically the support of the test facility out there. We're updating part 3, which is Rocky Shores, which has not much more of that, and that's policy environment council. And I sit on there, I represent the whole state for Port Spring transportation navigations.
All right, thanks for doing that. Jim, were you going to chime in?
I was only able to attend the Watershed Council meeting this month. I'm waiting for an announcement for their next meeting. And hopefully I'll be able to attend that. It's on their website yet.
Great, and you're getting, Karen, are you forwarding those to Jim, the meeting announcements for those, or Jim, are you just on your own on that?
I from their website, I also sent them an email reaching out.
Okay, great. Just briefly on my side, I went to the Oregon Cascade West Council of Governments meeting it was in Toledo as well as in Albany. This is a group that has relevance to us. There's some funding opportunities for us in certain instances. I think there's an opportunity for some networking there as well. Some surprisingly, my biggest networking was Dean Sawyer, who sat next to me. And we were able to chat a little bit about the port and those kinds of things. Very casual, but reminded him that a lot of good things are happening and we're getting moving on a lot of projects. And I'm just glad to hear it. So the meeting itself touched on water use in the state. They approved a grant for housing study to look at housing throughout the state. So again, not directly related to us at this meeting, but again, some good opportunities going forward. Okay.
And they said Howard hadn't seen that in the last year or so. Anybody seems to be on board there.
I don't believe they had seen this very often.
How much does it cost to be in that group?
That was in our packet.
I'm glad you came back.
It's like $7,000. Yeah, it's about $7,000.
But you felt it was good.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's also some funding opportunities. They're not huge.
We want to be friends.
Yeah. There's not huge grants, but again, they awarded $25,000 to do a preliminary study on assessing housing and rentals throughout the state. I think I can see Port putting together something along those lines for that level of funding for projects, preliminary stuff, things that will eventually generate more revenue or other aspects of our infrastructure. So I think for now, I think it's probably something we should keep going. So, yeah.
They also have a loan program for business loans. Just do that, and then also part of that, you want the clear transportation. Because if we ever put in for a connect or anything, again, that's where we bring that to the our COG that we belong to, and then we go internally on that. If we're going to go out for any connect or grants, we need to make sure that we stay part of the council work against government, because with that we belong to the Area Commission on Transportation, and that's how we get to the program.
Word. Okay. All right. Anybody have anything else? We can see the list of meeting schedules for November, December. I think it'll be important for us to continue to stay in touch on schedules. Again, as the year winds down, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but you mentioned it. It's already been mentioned here. Everyone has the agenda. Unless there's any questions there, I'll move into public comment. I'm sorry.
We can discuss, maybe it's worth discussing changing the meeting date.
November meeting.
Well,
Oh, and nobody wants to meet on Christmas Day? You guys sure? Karen, you had initially circulated something for us to chime in on in terms of whether it was a doodle poll or...
Yeah, you want me to submit one related to this? I don't know that it went through December.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should do it through the end of the year.
Okay.
We may, I don't know, what do you guys?
That's if we wanted to talk now about the December 25th, change that one. I mean, the November 27th is probably okay.
Yeah, the only concern is, and it's not necessarily a concern, it's just an observation, that the 27th Tuesday comes after the Thanksgiving holiday, the previous Thursday and Friday. Like I said, it's just an observation.
I guess we could say everybody's going to be around for the November. So,
in years past, we've done the week before Thanksgiving, because a lot of families take that time off that whole week, and a lot of schools around that too.
So which is 13th?
The 20th.
and combine,
Listen,
we're
it's
ready.
Thanksgiving the 22nd. I won't be around the 20th. Well,
Thanksgiving on the 22nd. Yeah. Or the 27th. You won't be Jim, you looking at your schedule?
Yeah, actually, they're on, available both the 20th and the 27th.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I hesitate to do something on the 20th for just that reason. I think a lot of people like to take that week off or traveling.
Yeah, I'll be back on the 13th if that works better for everyone.
I mean, again, if we want to make this decision now or throw it out to a doodle poll and we'll pick the best dates. What do you? Yeah. 13th or the 27th.
13th works for staff.
Well, in the interest of time right now, if you guys are okay, Karen, just send it out and we'll just pick the date. So that way we can and include the end of the year for December as well. And then we can chime in on that and identify the correct, the appropriate date that will capture it. Okay, any other thoughts? We'll entertain the second public comment section. Anybody have any public comments they'd like to make? State your name and record.
I'm at the hall with Bronstein, and I wanted to say thanks for Stuart and Aaron and more recently Terry with helping work through the agenda and I look forward to continuing the discussions and relationships as we're considering that project here. And working with Terry more on near-term opportunities to work together, but also looking at long-term planning will be important. So in that regards, working with Terry, but also getting to the general manager for long-term planning will be important for our project.
Anyone have anything else? Any other comments? Okay, not seeing any hands up. I will adjourn this meeting at 7:26.